How many times have we seen really good people transition into leadership roles and it goes south? A lot of times, ego is the cause. Today, we're going to talk about why you need to check your ego at the door. Stick with us. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. I am your host, John Espinosa. Welcome everybody to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Hey everyone, John here. Welcome to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Thank you for joining me today. For those continued listeners, what can I say? I appreciate you spending your time subscribing to the channel and checking in. For those new listeners out there, welcome to the Go Be Great community. You are part of the family. It's always great to have new leaders join the community, and I hope that you will find value by listening or watching this podcast. I've been in leadership business for 15 plus years, mentoring and coaching leaders, developing training for leaders, and walking right beside leaders as we navigate through the leadership journey. When we get better as the leaders, that allows us to pour into others and ultimately meet our mission of getting others to where they're going. So today's episode, we're going to dig into one of those leadership hacks that many of you, when I asked the question, what would you have liked to known day one moving into leadership? This got brought up more often than not. And there's a story around this. I had a colleague who I had worked with for at least 10 plus years, and he was a great guy, easy to get along with, excellent communicator. He did everything well. He worked teams very well. He led teams very well. And there was an opportunity, a management position that opened up, and we actually both applied for this particular position. I ended up not getting the position. He ended up getting the position. It was something that was bittersweet. I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. I wasn't ready. It wasn't my time. And he was a great individual. I was looking forward to having him lead our team. Well, the transition was made, and probably 10 to 14 days into him taking on this leadership role, things changed. Things changed pretty quickly. I saw a change in his demeanor. I saw a change in the way that he was responding to people. I even saw a change in the way that he would answer questions or ask questions. It became less curious and more directive. And one of the things that I learned out of this example, out of this story that I'm telling you all, is he let his ego get in the way. And he didn't have to do that. And sometimes we as leaders, and it may be that we've been in the position for quite some time and we think we got everything figured out. Or maybe we're coming from another organization and we're hired in because we're the fixer, we're the guru. Whatever the situation may be, ego can be the kryptonite to great leaders. So on this episode today, we're going to talk about why you as a leader need to check your ego at the door. We're going to talk about some things that as I was journaling around this episode and this topic today, I got to thinking, what have I seen? What have I experienced when ego gets the best of us? What have I seen? What have I experienced when we as leaders take advantage of the relationships, the influence that we have? And what have I seen? What have I experienced when you start getting a title in front of your name and the situation changes? So the first one I want to talk about around checking your ego at the door is keeping score. And I don't mean keeping score of a game or a winner and a loser. What I mean is when you do a favor for somebody, when you extend your hand, when you provide any support or assistance, don't take a tally of that. Don't write down in your little book, oh, well, Susie owes me one. Or Bill, I got him a promotion. He owes me. That's what I mean by keeping score. When we start keeping score, that's when we let our ego get in the way and we truly aren't in it to help others get to where they're going. We're in it for the benefit of ourselves because guess what? We did them a favor, they owe me a favor. A tit for a tat, right? An eye for an eye, as you could call it. People or leaders who keep score, you're going to figure them out pretty quick because there's going to be a time, and it might not be tomorrow, it might not be a week from now, but there will come a time when that person says, John, remember when I gave you an award? Guess what I need now? That's never a good way to start a conversation. That's something that you never want to hear because you quickly start to back away from those types of people and you realize, guess what? I got to tread carefully around. No more favors, right? Well, that's what happens, at least in my case, is I see where this is going. No more favors. So the first thing around checking your ego at the door, don't keep score. Do things really because you truly intend to help others get to where they're going, not because you're doing it for your own advantage or you're going to cash that favor in later. The second one that I want to talk around is holding people accountable for your assumptions. There have been times, and I've done this myself. I am a prime example of whenever you are leading a team or you're meeting somebody for the first time, and you may have heard things about this individual, or you may have ran into them in the past, and you start assuming that they're a high achiever. You start assuming that they're a hard worker. You start assuming that they can get anything done that you give them. Or you start assuming the opposite, that they can't handle the work, that they're not good with technology. Those are your assumptions. And then to go above and beyond that, now we take those assumptions as truth for us and we start holding them accountable because we thought that they were going to do something and they're not doing it. Or we thought that they couldn't handle something and they did it. That's what I mean by holding others accountable for assumptions, because when you put a ceiling on somebody, guess what happens? They're not going to go above and beyond that ceiling. They're going to go maybe right up to that ceiling and then it's going to stop. And that's the limiting factor when we hold others accountable based on our assumptions as leader. And most of the time, it's that ego that's directing those assumptions. It's that unconscious bias that allows us to start framing people and putting them in groups, putting that ceiling on them. And there's nothing worse than putting a ceiling on somebody because they're going to do one of two things. They're going to either rise and then fall below that ceiling, or they're going to crash through that ceiling. And they're probably going to look for bigger and better opportunities. And it will not be on your team. So that's the second one. Make sure that you don't hold people accountable based on your assumptions. The third one, and I mentioned this in the introduction, we can spend a lifetime building influence, and it just takes a moment for it all to come crashing down. How many times in your life have maybe somebody that you've known really well, a family member, colleague, partner, and they've built up a lot of influence. You trust them. You would do anything for them. You honor their opinion. You go to them for advice. And then that one time when you need them in your corner and you've heard that maybe they've talked bad about you to somebody else, or maybe they went behind your back and did something different than what they told you. How does that make you feel? I don't know about you all, but it immediately creates distrust, can even create some animosity to those individuals. Like after all this time, because influence doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. So that even hurts worse, is you've gained influence with people over time and then you've gone behind their back, or maybe it's even in front of their face in front of others, and you've completely crushed everything that you have spent so long, that you have worked so hard to build. Sometimes influence is equated to reputation. Now everybody makes mistakes. There is no perfect person walking the face of this earth. But influence isn't about perfectionism. It's all about how we gain trust from others based on our actions and having true intent. And ego fogs that. Ego fogs the fact that we need others to go far. There's a saying, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, take others with you. And in order for others to follow you, you have to have influence. Influence is leadership. But if you break that down, if you compromise that influence, it will take time to build that back up. So that's the third one. And then this last one is one that I struggle with. I struggle with quite a bit. Don't chase perfectionism. Perfectionism is your ego telling you that everything has to be just right in order for it to work, in order for it to perform well, in order for it to move on to the next phase. And if we're chasing perfectionism, and we expect perfectionism from ourselves, a lot of times that gets projected on others, and that's not a way to lead. People who think they're perfect have nothing but ego driving that thought around how others need to respond in your presence. It all goes back to that relatability. If we can't relate to others, we can't influence others, we can't work with others, and perfectionism is normally at that core of all of the systemic issues that not only you're going to have, but your team is going to have as well. Remember, people will do as you do, not necessarily as you say. And if they can't relate to you because you're constantly chasing perfectionism, you're going to find yourself on an island, and it's going to be very lonely. It's going to be like Survivor, where you may have Wilson, the volleyball, but that's going to be about it. It's going to be you and Wilson, and you better hope that that volleyball is perfect. So sometimes we're not building a piano. There are times when people will do things, and it may not be to how you would do it, but that's okay because it's their way. And that one thing that they do may not equate to what they're going to do next, because every single time that we trust people to do something, we empower them to go out and think on their own, and we acknowledge that, and we don't hold it to be perfect. That's when we truly are building inspiration and creating the culture that we want as leaders, that I want in my team. And ego has no part in that. So this episode, I went through those 4 things. Keeping score. Don't have a tally book. Don't check mark things whenever you do something for somebody. Make sure that you don't hold people accountable based on your assumptions. Don't take advantage of your influence that you have spent maybe a lifetime building. And last but not least, don't chase perfectionism. It will consume you to the point where you can't think about anything else. And you will start to see people getting farther and distancing themselves, moving outside of that inner circle. You're going to feel it and you're going to see it. And ego is at the core of all 4 of those. So as leaders, I urge you, I plead with you, check that ego at the door. Stay humble. Make sure that we embody the characteristics that we want others to see in themselves. I appreciate you joining me today. If the content that you heard today moves you, please give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you like these topics. I really am encouraged by all of your feedback. So if you want to give a feedback, if you have something to add, drop a comment below. I always appreciate those comments, and I personally read them, and I will respond back to you. Thank you for listening in today. Go be great. Talk to everyone later. Bye-bye. If you like what you're hearing, do us a favor. Click on that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up or leave a comment. That lets us know that what we are putting out benefits you. If you want additional information or resources or learn how to work with me, head on over to thejohnespinosa.com, because when we become better versions of ourselves, it helps us get others to where they're going. Go be great. Talk to everyone later.